हेलो फ्रेंड्स, वेलकम टू शॉर्ट हैंड सुपर फास्ट राइटर्स। दोस्तों, आप चैनल को सब्सक्राइब करें और बेल आइकन को दबाएं डेली शॉर्ट हैंड डिक्टेशंस के लिए। आज की डिक्टेशन वॉल्यूम नंबर 8 से ट्रांसक्रिप्शन नंबर 164। बी रेडी। 10 seconds, 5 seconds, start. Madam, I would like to say a few words. It was not my intention to speak on this bill at all, but having listened to the speech of the Honorable Minister towards the end of his reply, I am rather provoked. Shall I say frankly to say a word or two about the policy of the government in the matter? It is pointless for the government and the minister here to tell us that there has not been any shift in the policy with regard to foreign participation and the role of foreign enterprise in the oil industry of our country. Now we do not have the time nor the opportunity just at the time to recall the various utterances and statements given solemnly on the floor of this house and in the other house by the then Honorable Minister Mr. Malviya and others of the government, also enunciating certain basic approaches to questions of policy. What was it? In the first place, it was decided after a lot of groping in the dark in the earlier stages that as far as the oil industry was concerned, it should be from now on developed entirely in the public sector, and a beginning was made by exploration and the setting up of refineries with the cooperation of friendly countries like Romania. That is how we began. You will remember, Madam Vice Chairman, as other members in this House will remember, that when the Burma Shell and the Indian Oil Company demanded full expansion of their installed capacity, the demand was first sought to be entertained by certain elements in the government, but ultimately the government did not sanction even the expansion of the installed capacity by those concerns. The argument at that time, and a right argument at that, was that we should be given the opportunity and we should take the opportunity now of developing our own public sector and making the public sector much more pronounced than it would be in a matter of 2 or 3 years by stopping the expansion in the private sector as well. Therefore, we had a double policy at that time. I am not a spokesman of the government, but I do not know the policy of the government because these are public policies. What was the policy? It was, on the one hand, to create a public sector in the oil industry. You will remember, Madam, and the House will remember, that when we negotiated for certain oil to be imported from Russia, these foreign concerns, American and British, had the temerity to say that they would not be refining crude oil if it was imported from socialist countries and not from their own sources. After a lot of hesitation in the matter, the government ultimately and rightly so compelled these people to accept the crude oil imported from sources other than their own. This was the position. Now, these are not forgotten stories, and I may recall in this connection that the journal called Commerce wrote a series of editorial articles in which the Honorable Minister of Oil at that time was criticized precisely for pursuing an exclusive policy of public sector development in the matter of oil, and these criticisms were repeated also in certain other foreign journals, including the journals that emanate from the United States of America. It is also well known that at that time Mr. B.K. Nehru was approached by certain elements in the USA, and following that a New York paper wrote a certain article saying that Mr. B.K. Nehru's visit to India would be helpful in getting the oil prices of Mr. Malviya reversed in the direction in which the Americans would like. The article appeared, and I quoted this article on the floor of the House. If you would read also the other economic journals, you would find that a great debate continued for months and months with regard to what should be the oil policy of the government, and in that debate up to the time I am referring to, the government clearly asserted that oil should be developed exclusively in the public sector in all its stages, especially in refining and exploration. We took certain steps. That is how such developments have taken place. The mentality of the foreign equity participation was not there. Had it been so, we would not have had the fine refining centers in our country. We would not have been developing our industry in the way we have done in the course of the past few years. Now that vigorous policy was pursued, although we would have liked it to be much more vigorous than actually it was. Then what happened? Systematic pressures were brought to bear upon the government in order to compromise this policy, to make the government resile from the position that it had taken. In that connection, you will remember, sir, that the Sahni committee made a report with regard to the operations of the foreign oil concerns. The reasons why a development bank of this kind is necessary are not very difficult to understand. The size of the allocation for industrialization in the first two 5-year plans was not on the whole so great as to strain the resources of the existing financial institutions, including banks. But latterly, the gaps in the present institutional framework for the provision of industrial credit, especially for medium and long term periods, have come to light. This, I think, was inevitable. With a projected outlay of rupees 3100 crores for industrialization in the 11th 5-year plan, and with rising costs, it would have been surprising if the needs of industry could have been promptly or fully satisfied within our existing resources, as it is the establishment of a high powered agency which may be able to undertake residual responsibility, or ultimately for promoting or accelerating industrial growth, has become urgently necessary. I am not unmindful, sir, while I am saying this, of the effort which banks and other industrial finance corporations have been making to adapt themselves to the changes which are being brought about as a result of rapid industrialization. Bank advances this year, at the peak of the busy season, reached a record level, and nearly 60% of the advances are now granted for industrial purposes. Thanks for watching. Do like, subscribe, and share.